Othering Podcast explores the world of marginalized communities with a focus on the disabled and LGBTQ+. In our discussions, we will provide a platform for our guests to advocate and share their stories. By delving deep into their difficulties and successes, we will explore the changes necessary to improve lives everywhere. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Othering Podcast with Mike and Dory.
Hello.
Hey!
Hello. Today we are talking to Christina Lisk. She has quite an extensive bio here, so I'm just going to read what she told us. Lots of publications, very impressive. So she has published articles on disabled life in various locations, like I said, including The Mighty and HearingLikeMe.com. Her short stories and poetry have been published in Nothing Ever Happens in Fox Hollow Anthology Volume 2 and Last Stanza Poetry Journal, respectively. In fall of 2024, Christina's personal essays were featured in Seasons of Sisterhood, a novel centered around travel to Cameroon. Previous experiences on podcasts and videos include Your Disabled Joy with Nico Meyering, an interview of Roy Payan, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, for Disability Belongings, I'm not good with names, Unfiltered Stories, and Spoonful of Strength. In summer of 2025, Christina is going to begin her master's in Italian at Middlebury Language School, and she's looking forward to exploring how learning a foreign language can help shape personal narratives. Welcome, Christina. Very impressive.
Yes. Welcome and extremely impressive. That's beautiful.
You.
Like, I am very impressed with all that you have done. And how was it getting to be able to say that you've accomplished all that?
Honestly, for me, it wasn't about accomplishment. It was a tool of survival and an opportunity to thrive. I've always been a bit of a storyteller at heart. Like, when I was a kid, I always told stories with my Barbies and my stuffed toys, and then I'd write them down. But when I was 13 and I was recovering from my, let's see, 6th surgery,
Jeez.
I noticed I was in this limbo between having a really, really active brain, but if I went out of the house for an hour, I'd have to sleep for another 3. So I would spend that time just writing. And did I mention writing? Yeah.
Just a little bit of writing on the side then.
And I wrote a fiction piece that ended up being over 200 pages. I took it to my English teacher, and she said to me, Christina, if you stop writing for any reason, I will hunt you down and make you start again. After that, I was like, yes, ma'am, Ms. Demopoulos.
That's a good critique to have.
Yes, it is. It's always good and feels great when, teachers are like, don't stop, don't ever stop. And I have to admit that they're right, being able to, having done that, especially from a young age, is really amazing. I mean, just being able to hone it from an early age. A lot of people don't always get a chance to even realize what their gifts are and don't get to touch on them or work with them until they're an adult at a college.
Honestly, my gifts have been my biggest motivator for getting me through treatment. It's like, if I'm not writing, then why am I taking all these pills, undergoing all these scans, getting these god-awful intense treatments, going through these brutal surgeries? You have to have a purpose when you're going through treatment. Otherwise, you're just a shell of a person taking all these different things just because someone else tells you to. You can't survive unless you have a why.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And the why can be anything. It could just be because you like seeing the trees, or because you want to write, you want to share your story, you want to have that friend. I mean, it doesn't matter what your why is, as long as you have your why.
Exactly. And the fact that you mention a why even being something like the trees, it makes me think of the experience of being able to hear the wind in the trees for multiple first times, so to speak. There was the first time with every hearing restoration surgery I had, from the point where I was literally half deaf. There was the why from when I put in my first hearing aid, the why from when I got a new hearing aid after that, And then the more recent why of getting bilateral hearing aids and being able to rediscover all of these sounds that I didn't realize were missing.
Let's backtrack a minute here. We've talked about all your publications, but we haven't really talked about your ailments or anything like that. And you're talking about hearing aids and lots of surgeries. Can you kind of explain for the listener what you have gone through?
Absolutely, of course. Well, we didn't find, while we're talking about whys, we didn't find an underlining why for all of these things happening until 2024 when I got diagnosed with Ehlers Danlos syndrome. For those who don't know, it's a connective tissue disease where all of your connective tissue is made a lot more loose and flexible than it should be. A lot of people associate it with subluxing and dislocating your joints. A sublux being when you partially dislocate it. While that's definitely the case for me, I've had plenty of subluxes and I've popped my ribs before.
Oh.
The biggest issue I had from the time I was a child was that I kept re-rupturing my eardrums. People don't think about this, but your eardrums are made of connective tissue.
Yeah.
And when you have a connective tissue disease, the slightest infection is going to make your eardrums blow again and again and again. The damage was so bad that I kept having to go into surgery to get it fixed. And because we didn't know I had EDS, it kept repeatedly failing. No one could tell me what was going on, and it drove me crazy. But writing gave me an outlet to keep me sane and steady all through it, even in the days where I was ready to give up hope. As long as I was either part of a story or telling a story, I had a reason to live. I had a reason to keep going even when there was so much uncertainty. And there are times where when you don't know you have EDS, but you're feeling all of its effects and none of the doctors are believing you, you start to wonder what's real. Your own personal narrative, whether or not you're a storyteller, gets completely warped by a lack of information.
Yeah, and especially with EDS being difficult to diagnose because it's not like, oh, here's a blood test and, oh, okay, you've got Ehlers Danlos. It's a genetic testing. And a lot of people don't, doctors included, don't realize that it takes genetic testing to find this, and that it is not necessarily a disease of exclusion, and it's definitely not like, the current trendiness of, well, I feel like I want to have something, so today I'm going to pick Ehlers Danlos. Tomorrow it'll be deafness. And it's like ridiculous to even think that people are wanting these diseases as if it's some sort of trendy fashion statement. But doctors just don't want to listen and don't want to understand that so much is connected, yet that's what you're taught, is that the whole body's connected.
Exactly. And when I found out all these little pieces added up to EDS, it was like suddenly everything made sense, but then I had to completely change the way I saw myself. And I didn't really get a solid wake-up call until I got diagnosed with nutcracker syndrome, which is a vascular compression syndrome where the left renal vein gets pinched between two other veins. It causes overflow of blood either into the kidney or into the gonadal vein from the renal vein, causing varicose veins all over the reproductive organs. Thankfully, I had the latter issue, so my kidneys didn't get damaged, but when I went to see the vascular surgeon, he was like, well, you probably have these varicose veins from endometriosis, but nutcracker syndrome's a possibility, but it's rare, but we're still going to check it out. And then when we found I had it, I was like, I don't want to face the possibility that I have EDS. I just want to live in the story where all of this is hormonal because that's what I'm familiar with. That's what I've been taught. That's easier to control.
Yeah.
When you get the wake-up call that your connective tissue's different, you're 30-something years old and you're already having vascular problems, it's like, I don't want to have to face this truth, but like it or not, here it is. Yeah. I didn't want to think I had EDS. I was so used to the stories of people who would roll over in bed and pop their hip. Yeah. Or people who were in so much pain they'd need walkers everywhere. Or people with MCAS who were in anaphylaxis all the time, or people with POTS who were always in the ER with tachycardia. When I was first told, we think you might have EDS, I was like, no, this can't be happening to me. This isn't me. And then when my physical therapist said, if you don't have hypermobile Ehlers Danlos, we think you'll have vascular Ehlers Danlos, it was like, please, anything but that. Vascular Ehlers Danlos is the most deadly of all the subtypes.
Yes, it is, because it affects the heart more directly than the other subtypes. Even though all of the subtypes can affect the heart because, there's connective tissues right there. Keeping the heart, suspended in our fluids and all that stuff. But vascular is just, that's terrifying.
Yeah, and not only that, with the whole vascular system being fragile, there's greater risk for aneurysms, aortic dissection, major perforations of different major organs, and we have a lot of vascular problems in my mother's family. There was very serious concern about me having it once I got diagnosed with vascular issues. Thankfully, in the end, everybody was like, no, you have hypermobile EDS after the genetic testing. But for those weeks where I was waiting between the test and the answers, I was losing my mind. I was like,
I believe it.
It was like, oh my God, am I an old lady at 30-something? Was my midlife point in high school or in college?
Yeah, that's a terrifying reality with EDS, is that depending upon which subtype that you get, your peak could have been at age 18.
Were you diagnosed with the Nutcracker syndrome before or after you were diagnosed with EDS?
Before. It was
okay.
the big screaming red flag that I probably had it. Because before I got diagnosed with that, I had, PCOS, migraines, quote-unquote vertigo problems that nobody could explain, extremely bad allergies. The allergist is very reluctant to say MCAS. I say, I don't care what you call it as long as you treat it.
Yeah.
But I had all of these different things that I didn't realize were linked back to EDS. I thought it was all just hormonal stuff because it came on when I was a teenager. Turns out that EDS is often worsened when you're a teen because of all the hormones that make all the tissues more relaxed.
Yep. But especially for people born female and assigned female at birth, that because our hormones fluctuate monthly, it also kind of changes the laxity of the tissues, and so you got that to contend with already. And then when you have EDS, that's even made worse because, you got your luteal phases and all of those happy phases that, have a happy period, my ass, but it changes how your body moves. And, men do have issues too, because when they're hitting puberty as well, their hormones are going in raging. And usually that's where the worst part is for men and people assigned male at birth. But people assigned female at birth are usually more diagnosed with it. And I'm wondering if it's because our hormones are so different and every month.
That's the current theory. There's still very little research on EDS as a whole, and the fact that men are currently underdiagnosed, it's so prevalent that the EDS Society has a support group exclusively for men with EDS.
Yeah, because I was reading recently that they think a lot more men actually do have it, but because of, the stigma of, well, you just walk it off, you're not supposed to be showing that you're vulnerable or anything like that.
To be tough.
Yeah. That a lot of them aren't agreeing to go to the doctor to say, hey, this is going on. And again,
they think it's just sports injuries.
Right. And we've got doctors that sit there and are like, well, nah, they can't be related. That doesn't, nah. And it's like, but if our bodies are housed in one shell, why couldn't it all be related to, a specific disease or specific syndrome?
I mean, Occam's razor states the simplest explanation is often the correct one, and EDS is actually the simplest explanation for a lot of things. I mean, even the quote unquote vertigo I was having. We thought it was this complex explanation with my ears, and even with all the surgery, I was still going to be super dizzy from that alone. And then I find when I'm in physical therapy, they were like, "Do you get dizzy?" And I was like, "Do I get dizzy? Not only have I gone abroad for my writings about vertigo, I can't even bend over to pick up the dog dish without getting dizzy." And they were like, "That sounds like POTS." And I was like, "What? You mean it's been a cardiac problem? You mean this has all been related to the different EDS malfunctions and not really bad ears and really bad hormones? You mean to tell me it all comes back to connective tissue?"
And that's where I think we kind of miss the mark, is that we want to, especially for females, we want to just go ahead and say, "Oh, well, it's your time of the month, so it must be that." Or, "Oh, well, you're just stressed, calm down." And it's like, but when you have POTS symptoms, which are vast, and then you've got the hypermobility where, and it's more than just you can do the splits. This is your fingers are different. For the audience, you can bend your fingers back, touching like the back of your palm. That's not normal. That is not supposed to be the criteria of which we should all be striving for, because you'll just break your fingers off. And we don't want you to do that. Please don't.
We are not responsible for any attempts
No.
to try to prove you're hypermobile. We are not responsible for the consequences.
No, at all, please. Just make sure you sit and move your body correctly. But, sitting in the W stance, where you're on your butt and your legs are in a W out on either side, is a symptom of Ehlers Danlos. And toe walking, which a lot of kids do, is also a symptom of Ehlers Danlos, which then relates to ADHD and all of these other things. So it's like amazing that if we can kind of start to connect the dots, why can't the medical profession connect those dots?
Based on your facial expression, I think a lot of those symptoms hit home with you.
Yeah, I mean, even the W sitting, I looked down and I was like, "Oh crap, I'm doing the W sitting right now." It's like all these little things people point out about EDS, and then I'm like, "Oh crap, this was under my nose the whole time. I have literally looked at this every day I've been alive, and I had no clue that it was holding a bigger answer to something I've always wondered."
But that shouldn't be on you. That should be on the doctors to find.
Yeah.
For the doctors to see and to pay attention to.
And to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, we should play a role in our own health and kind of say, I've noticed these things and such. But it's not on us to know every single symptom there is. And it's not on us to remember all of that. It's on them to help us get through these. And, part of those symptoms that I was mentioning with the W and all that stuff, it's because our children have sat in that position many times. And I was, growing up, sat in that position when nobody knew anything about Ehlers Danlos. And I didn't find out until probably 44 to 47 area is when I discovered that. And that's a long time to not know anything about that.
Yeah, I can't even imagine in your 40s, because in my 30s, it's been challenging. It's the type of thing where I've been reading philosophy, I've been listening to different people, I've been traveling and exploring all these different things, because it's like, when you find out the fundamental basis of your whole being has been different your whole life than you actually thought, it makes you question every single thing you know. It makes you question your identity. It makes you question your relationships, your beliefs, because suddenly the foundation of you is not what you expected at all. You carry stories, and suddenly a lot of your stories are wrong.
Yeah. Right. And it definitely, speaking about that, did you think that kind of triggers a bit of depression maybe, or anxiety in some people? Because the thought of you spent your whole life assuming that, say, when you get the diagnosis of PCOS, it's just your hormones. And then you come to find that it's not just PCOS. And you kept saying it, how your whole foundation was based off of knowing that, you had all of these different unrelated diseases, that when you discovered that they actually were related because of the EDS, did that kind of make you relieved, or did that prompt any depression?
Yes, it was definitely a combination of both, because it was like, while I finally had clarity on why I was the way I was, I had more depression because it felt like everything I knew was shattered. There were a lot of people I picked fights with because I was going to therapy thinking that my chronic pain was the result of depression and that I had to stand up for myself more. So I argued with a lot of people. I picked fights with a lot of people. It caused a lot of rifts. But I thought if I thought hard enough, if I pushed hard enough, then maybe I'd stop feeling this pain. And I was drinking 4 to 5 shots of espresso a day just to keep myself upright, and I chase it with a lot of Aleve. It's the type of thing where I think to myself, thank God my dad was a chemist, and I got full lessons on the differences between prescription and street drugs, or I might have turned to street drugs because the pain was that bad. I have done so many things that hurt myself and other people over the years just because I didn't understand what was happening to me. That was the most depressing part about it. I mean, I'm not even Catholic, and I went to confessional about it. It was that bad.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah.
When you're willing to say, "Look, you're a priest. Get in here."
Yeah.
So once you figured it all out, what are you doing now to help with your chronic pain and to kind of, I guess, come to terms with it all?
Well, I'm in physical therapy right now to work on strengthening the muscles around my joints. I have been using a whole lot of KT tape. I jump into Epsom salt baths all the time. I'm going to sound like such a naturopath for saying this. I take a lot of vitamins just so I don't have to go to the doctor. Because the last time I tried going to the doctor about chronic pain, she said, well, we don't have a magic wand. And I said to her, I know you don't have a magic wand. That's why I don't come to you very often.
That's a shitty comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really shitty comment. And that's the type of stuff I get from doctors all the time. So I either do things with a physical therapist or keep it at home, especially because they assume that whenever you talk about EDS, you're drug seeking.
Yep.
And I'm like, the last time I had Dilaudid, it turned me into a glorified barf machine and didn't do anything for my pain. Do not get narcotics near me unless you want to see me throw up for days.
Yeah.
I have similar reaction. I don't throw up. I get dizzy and really nauseated. Any narcotics is terrible for me.
Yeah, he's awful. And the fact that upsets me too is the fact that, you're going to doctors, whether they are naturopaths or whatever they are, and the fact that they would be so dismissive as to, well, I don't have a magic wand, or like in my case, I was told to just walk it off. I don't see anything wrong. Just go ahead and walk it off. Literally said, walk it off. And it's like, why the hell am I going to you then?
Yeah, exactly. Especially in this country where we're paying copious amounts of money out the wazoo. Did the doctors ever think that maybe one of the reasons why people are turning to social media is because it's free?
Yeah.
Is because it's not going to bankrupt us? It's because maybe we're not going to have to pay somewhere between $50 to $150 per session just to be told we don't have a magic wand.
Not to mention that people on social media actually listen. And these people are going to be like, well, I have similar issues. This sounds like what I have, and I was diagnosed with blah. And instead of going to a doctor and being like, well, I have X, Y, and Z issues. Oh, well, that can't be anything important. I don't see anything in your blood. Or
here's a painkiller. You're good.
Yeah. Or, here's a painkiller and call me in the morning type of crap. And that's why they keep, talking about it's so trendy, but it's not trendy. It's because that's the only way that we can find out what we have, where to go with these.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with the doctor admitting that they were wrong about something or they made a mistake. Because when I saw my vascular surgeon, he genuinely thought that all the pelvic congestion I was having was a result of endometriosis. He was ready to bounce me back to the gynecologist and say, you need endosurgery. But I said to him, I know you're probably right, but I have already had 10 surgeries. I've had PTSD from them. I cannot have another surgery unless everything else is ruled out and I know I'm doing the right one. Mm-hmm. When my ultrasound and my CT scan came back positive for Nutcracker, he was like, I really thought it wasn't going to be Nutcracker syndrome. I really thought it was going to be endo. And I was like, I know, me too. Honestly, I wanted it to be endo because vascular surgery is scary. Mm-hmm. But at least he was willing to admit that he was wrong about his initial assumption. And he did everything in his power to not only get me the best care possible, but also get me the best care that was the least traumatic.
And that takes a lot on their part, is to admit that, you know what, I was wrong. And the fact that he was willing to do that says that how good of a doctor he is. Because most of them are just kind of leave you hanging there, even if they know they're wrong. I had an argument with a doctor because she diagnosed me as having restless leg syndrome. And I kept asking her questions about it, like, does it cause pain all day long? Does it create tremors and things like that during the day? Because most of the symptoms that you read about, it's at night. And I kept asking her these things, and she wouldn't answer me. And so I finally got a hold of her, and I'm like, I kind of want to know these things because this is what I'm experiencing. And I want to know what I can do to help this. And she's like, well, I just thought you wanted a second opinion. And I'm like, yeah, I would love one, but I also want to know how to fix this so that I can survive this, so that I can live my life without great pain. I mean, I was still am, but I was in excruciating pain. And the way, getting dismissed like that, well, I just thought you wanted another opinion. I want more than an opinion.
Yeah, exactly. The point of a second opinion is often to get a better course of action,
right,
or a second affirmation that what you're doing is okay. Like the cardiologist who diagnosed me with POTS and EDS, I went to her for a second opinion because the first cardiologist said, you have inappropriate sinus tachycardia, take these beta blockers. And I was hesitant to start them because my experience with spironolactone was that a small dose was enough to put my blood pressure in the toilet, make me really loopy and on the brink of passing out. Mm-hmm. So I was like, let's get a second opinion before we try these. And she was like, oh God, no, you don't need beta blockers. That's too heavy for you. And I was like, thank you.
Right. And that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for necessarily them to just brush us off. We want to make sure that we're going for the right course of action. And that's what I was expecting from her. But what I got was just, I don't know. It's like, okay, then why did you give me this diagnosis? And she's like, well, if you're going to be hostile, I don't need to talk to you. I'm hostile because you wouldn't talk to me. And because you just you threw out something that you thought it may be and then ghosted me.
Asking questions is not a hostile thing to do.
Not at all.
Because you're being hostile for asking questions, that's a them problem. It's like you're in a doctor's office, you're not in a court of law, you're not being a litigator with somebody on the defense stand. You're asking questions for your health and your well-being so that you don't have to see each other as often.
Right. And so that I could get the medicine or not medicine and just be like, okay, well, if it's this, then maybe I could take the Epsom salts bath and not have to worry about so much medicine and, different things like that, because I wasn't seeking medicine. I hate taking medicine.
Oh my God, me too. Because for me, a lot of the medications, I get a lot of the worst side effects. Part of how EDS got diagnosed in my family is that it tends to go one of two ways with medication. Either you don't feel it at all, or every single weird side effect you can get, you end up getting it. And that problem could be traced all down my mother's line of the family. Mom has issues with it. Grandma had issues with it. Her mother had issues with it. We get all the really weird and really bad side effects. Like, part of why I didn't want to take a beta blocker was because I didn't want to deal with the side effects. The other cardiologist said consider an SSRI, and I was like, the last time I took an SSRI, I ended up in the hospital 5 days later. It gave me one of the worst migraines I ever had. I will sometimes use a muscle relaxant with pain stuff. I'll stick to Aleve, but people really don't get the severity of side effects and how hard they can hit you if you have EDS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question with a follow-up question. The first one is, how old were you when you had your first surgery?
2.
2. So you've had 10 surgeries. I guess you're in your 30s based on what you've said, right?
I have had, well, when I was first talking about 10 surgeries with a vascular surgeon, that was between ages 2 and 31.
Okay.
With the Nutcracker syndrome, I needed 2 surgeries to get it taken care of. 1 to explore the vascular compressions, and then 1 to fix them. So I've actually had a total of 12.
So my follow-up question then, as a child going through all of that, how was your support system and how were the doctors kind of like acting towards you versus towards your parents or towards you versus when you got older?
Well, my doctors at CHOP, they were wonderful. They are a fundamental part of who I am. My first surgeon at CHOP, he was very firm with me when I needed my hearing taken care of. He said to me, now you can either have a tympanoplasty to repair your eardrums, or you can get a pair of hearing aids, but you can't go on living as you are right now. You need to be able to hear. I do want to finish up by talking about how my surgeons at CHOP, like the first one I had, he was very respectful about me making different choices. He gave me an arena where it was like, we're the adults, so you have to make a choice within the choices we set out for you. You can't get out of this, but you need to learn to make decisions for yourself. My second surgeon at CHOP, I started seeing him because the first surgeon said after a while, I can't fix your eardrums. I don't know what's going on here, but you need somebody with more advanced techniques than what I have. And the second surgeon, he said to me with the 8th surgery, we have a new cartilage graft we can do. It's 99.9% guaranteed to work. Guess you fell into the 0.1%.
Of course.
And at the time, he said, I've only seen this happen in 2 to 3 other cases before you. And it's like, oh, when you're a rarity at CHOP, that's bad. But we became allies in the trenches after a while. It was never about me versus him. When I started seeing other doctors in the world, I was very surprised at the amount of gaslighting and disbelief that went on because my surgeons at CHOP always believed me. They were in my corner. They were on my side. I never would have expected this level of animosity as an adult.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. Like, I remember having lots of injuries and all that stuff, and the doctors were always just wonderful and let's take care of you, let's help you when I was a kid. And then it's like I got to an adulthood and it felt like, oh, well, I guess we'll deal with you now. And that kind of difference was just jarring and and like you said, gaslighting is much stronger when you're an adult. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's frustrating because at that point, when you're an adult, you know your body really well. You know that, okay, I don't normally have these issues. What's going on? And so you would think that they would listen better than to a child who doesn't necessarily know everything. Not saying they shouldn't listen to a child. They should. But you would think that they would respect the age, the wisdom, and the knowledge better in an adult.
Exactly. You'd think that they would understand that at this point in our lives, we're mature enough to understand how we function and the decisions that we want to make for ourselves, and that by the time we're going to them, even if someone may or may not have Googled anything beforehand, we take it to them to be like, hey, can you verify this as a possibility? If you don't think this is a possibility, what is an actual possibility for me? What could look like this, but actually isn't this? And even if they say, oh, it's anxiety or depression, rarely do they actually give you a good course of action to deal with it. They don't say, this is a psychiatrist we work with. go see this particular psychiatrist, we will work with them, nor do they say, this is a psychiatrist with good therapists in their practice. Why don't we coordinate to figure out what's going on? It's all just, it's anxiety, do yoga.
Yeah,
Yep.
I love the do yoga as you're falling off a cliff. Try yoga, it'll cushion your fall. I mean, it's ridiculous that we're expected to do that, and that it's the end all and be all of everything. It's not that yoga's bad, it's good, but it doesn't cure everything, and not everything needs to be fixed. Sometimes it can't be fixed, and that's okay too. And we're still human, we're still people, we're still worthy of love and affection. Just because we're still sick 20, 30, 40 years later doesn't mean that our worth has lessened.
Exactly. And if anything, our experiences add valuable perspectives and different means of learning how to solve problems that other people should really consider. Part of why I've been considered a good problem solver is that I've had to learn different ways to do things over the years. If the traditional way won't work for me and no one's going to help me out, who's got to figure it out?
Right.
Spoiler alert, not other people most of the time.
Well, a lot of times other people you hear a lot of, well, it's just too much to deal with, and they're always sick. Why don't they, be happy and go lucky and not worry about being sick or in pain? Well, that's our life. All of us would love to just be like, oh, let me just take off this pain shirt and we'll be great. That would be nice. But it doesn't work that way. So it's a part of our life. And when something's a part of your life, like, your dogs, your cats, your family members, you mention it.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, even the animals will sometimes understand it better than the humans do.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
So true.
Like, your pets will come and cuddle with you if you need a cuddle. And why can't people get that? If it's hard for you to watch us and it's too much for you, imagine how much it is for us.
Exactly. Like, you can walk away, but for us, this is Hotel California.
Right. We can't just walk away from it. We can't leave it at the door like a bag of shit, as much as we would love to. But, it just doesn't work that way. And we need people to understand that we're not doing this because we want attention, and that we're not drug seeking. We're not hypochondriac, as a lot of, some of us get labeled because we go doctor to doctor to doctor. We do that because we want the answer.
Exactly. And honestly, people don't talk about how even if you put on the happy-go-lucky thing, sometimes that's just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, because you can push yourself too hard and really cause yourself a lot of pain. I've hurt myself doing that so many times that I have had friends actually drag me back to bed if I'm trying too hard to work, or if I'm partying too hard. They will be like, no, Christina, you have to lie down now.
There are a lot of times I need to stop Dory because she'll try to do stuff that she shouldn't be doing that I know is going to knock her down for the next 2 or 3 days. So
yeah, because I would try and paint a room if I could, and because I want to help. But with that idea, though, it's just we want to be respected. And it just, like, for instance, I saw a scene from this new TV show called The Pit, and it's about doctors in Pittsburgh, level 1 trauma hospital. And they're in the ER, and this one person is writhing in pain. And the police and some of the doctors automatically assume she's just drug seeking. They didn't stop to ask her anything. They just assumed she was drug seeking. And it turned out that she had sickle cell.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is excruciatingly horrid pain. It's, I don't have it, but from what I have heard, it is basically having a bunch of razor blades going through your veins.
Oof. Oh my God.
Yeah, and to think that that person who is writhing in pain, they must be drug seeking is really a slap in the face. And it's like, don't you understand at why we let it get that bad then?
Yeah, I mean, if everybody's going to accuse you of drug seeking, why would you seek help before it got to the point of almost no return?
Right.
And if you're going in at the point of almost no return and the doctor's still saying, oh, you're just drug seeking, it's like, what the heck is wrong with you? Even if, let's say in the worst case scenario, theoretical scenario, oh, there actually is drug seeking, you can still run all of the tests to figure that out. You can still examine everything from top to bottom. It's an excellent way to filter out the situation. Give everybody equitable care. Problem solved.
Yes, and believe us, not everybody is a liar. Not everybody is, hoping to be the next rich person because we got you on some sort of lawsuit or anything. We're not out to get you. We're out to get an answer. That's it.
Even then, with a lot of the lawsuits and stuff like that, when you think of all the medical bills that would come ahead from somebody's mistake, lost wages, the fees you'd have to pay for representation, suing a doctor does not pay for anybody. The best you can get after a while is break even. And both sides get screwed because of the fact that our healthcare system is too expensive.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a huge thing, is that our healthcare system, if you pay out of pocket, it's ridiculous. I mean, to have a baby in this country, it's like $17,000, $9,000 to $17,000, depending upon what may be wrong. And then that's just on the mother's part. That's not even including if anything is wrong with the child, or even if it's normal. They are normal. And so that's scary right there. And then if, God forbid, you have a heart attack, I mean, women are more likely to be dismissed from that. And then with vascular EDS or any type of EDS, you're more likely to have a heart attack than the general population. So knowing that, and then you get dismissed anyway. And then it's just a compound of PTSD, basically.
Pretty much. It almost feels like PTSD is an unspoken comorbidity of EDS because of how badly we get treated.
Yeah.
I go to EDS support groups and not a single session goes by that somebody doesn't talk about being traumatized. If there's ever an EDS support group meeting where nobody's traumatized, or maybe one person in the room hasn't been traumatized, it would be a small miracle. The fact that we're treated so badly because of something we can't control, it's like, is it any wonder that the rate of abusive relationships amongst chronically ill people, it's not 1 in 3, it's 1 in 2. And that's just what's documented.
Yeah, and that's terrifying, because I'm sure that part of it is because they're terrified of saying anything. Because, you've already got, amongst the able-bodied people, the likelihood of being believed that you're in a dangerous situation is slim to none. And so when you're disabled, you've got an even more insurmountable climb in order to get somebody to listen to you and then believe you on top of that. That's difficult as hell.
And not only that, you're going up against 2 other major issues where people are like, well, shouldn't you be grateful somebody wants you at all?
Yeah, as if we're, butt ugly ogres.
Yeah. And the other issue on top of that is that when people talk to us that way, if somebody begins psychologically abusing you, what they say, it sounds normal already, because doctors have said it, teachers have said it, bosses have said it, family members have said it. All of the psychological abuse that would raise red flags in able-bodied people, it won't register the same way with us, because that abuse, more often than not, it becomes our norm just because we're sick.
Yeah. And, you can't possibly be sick that long, or you can't possibly be in that much pain. And, those little things chip away at your self-esteem, because then you kind of, even when you get the diagnosis, sometimes you're still like, but is it real? Am I imagining this? Maybe it's all in my head, or, oh, no, maybe the doctor was wrong. And they think it's that because maybe I said the things wrong. And so you keep putting it on yourself, thinking, I'm wrong. It can't possibly be this. So we engage in risky behaviors where sometimes we don't take our medicine, or we'll try and do something because it's like we constantly want to prove that it's there, because we feel like if we don't, then it was just in our head, because that's how everybody else kind of treats you.
Exactly. The number of times I've done that for God knows how long. Hell, I used to work 12 to 13-hour restaurant shifts with a huge smile on my face, even when I was in screaming pain and I thought I was going to pass out. I once had one long day in a cafe, went to the doctor to have a horribly painful in-office procedure, went to work the next day, walking it up and smiling like nothing happened.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous that we even have to live like that, and that we have to push ourselves. And then people wonder why, when we want to get, like, say, our Social Security, that's just a whole other, podcast in and of itself, because you can't even get that easily. And then you have to fight for that 80 times over. You have to fight in order to get the placard, in order to park in, handicap spots, because you got to prove that it's permanent. And, most doctors aren't giving it out like candy.
Yeah, no, if anything, they try to give you the runaround as many times as they possibly can, because they think either you'll get so burnt out you won't even want to try, or, well, let's not think of the other alternative too much. That's a little too grim. But the purpose either way is to try and push as many people out as possible. I've warned people who are applying for SSDI that it's almost impossible to get a yes on the first round. You're probably going to get a no the first round, and the second round, if you're really serious about this, you need to know you're looking at least 3 to 4 rounds. And it's honestly part of why, like, no matter how sick I get, I won't do it. Because between the process and the pittance they give you every single month, I'm like, going on SSDI is where dreams go to die. No, I have too much that I want to fight for.
And it shouldn't be that way. We contribute to society. Maybe not necessarily us, working 9 to 5 or 12 to 12 type of thing. But we still contribute because we provide companionship. We provide love. We provide happiness to people. And that should value more than whether or not we can work a job at, 12 hours a day.
We provide education and enlightenment, too. I mean, this podcast right here, this is an education about disabled life for the public. This is a more valuable contribution, arguably, than what you'd see in a typical public school curriculum.
Yeah, and that's what I want, is because, good point there is that growing up, I never saw anybody that was in a wheelchair. I never saw anybody that was on crutches, other than, broke their leg type of thing. It was never beyond that. And you're automatically separated from those with intellectual disabilities. And so you don't get to see that growing up a lot. And I think that's a disservice.
And when we saw them growing up, I'm going to say a lot of them were looked down on a lot more than they should be. They were made fun of and called names back then. It wasn't quite the same as it is today, unfortunately.
Double check me. Were the ugly laws still in place at that time? Or
yes.
Were the ugly laws... Okay. Yeah, because the ugly laws, even if they've been repealed now, they still exist, even if they're not spoken.
And I'm pretty sure that they were starting to repeal them when Mike and I were younger, but they were still kind of around in a lot of different areas, and which is completely and utterly stupid, because I've known a lot more ugly people that were able-bodied than anybody who has ever been disabled. And I mean, ugly inside, and just
ugliness of the soul that no plastic surgeon in this world can fix. No matter what surgical procedures anybody can have, if you have ugliness of the soul, you're stuck with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it shows.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are the ones that are just, that I'm not doing this for them either. I'm doing this for all of us that have hearts, that have curiosity, and, want to know more about us because they didn't grow up seeing us, being around us, and didn't get that chance to, I've said this before, but this community is the best, sweetest, wonderfulest community I have ever been
I agree.
having the honor of being a part of. And I hate the fact that we all had to be disabled and in pain and, things like that in order to be a part of it. But I would take my chronic pain any day if I get to be with you guys than not have it and be with those people that are so, even though they may be nice to look at, they're just horrible. And it's just, I don't want to be around that. I want to be around the beautiful people. And by beautiful, I mean the ones that are so beautiful inside, it doesn't matter what they look like on the outside because that beauty just radiates.
And part of that beauty, too, is that as our community continues to grow, it seems like a lot of us are getting more open towards various nuances within disabled life.
Mm-hmm.
I found in 2020 there was a lot of polarity in the chronic illness community, but as we moved forward, we made space for a lot of nuance. And there's a major disability figure, Nico Meyering, with his project, Your Disabled Joy. I loved how much nuance he brought to an experience of mine that was very controversial amongst disabled people, because he was like, yes, you did this thing that was not broadly accepted, but you did it legally. You found a way to do it in a way that it was structured, it was acceptable, you made it work. And I was like, thank you for validating this decision that has caused so much controversy.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention, and I'll say this again too, it's just, if you have a placard or if you have the license plate that says that you are physically disabled, even if it's the 6-month one, temporary before you get, your full blue one, park where you need to. Mm-hmm. Don't limit not saying don't be courteous to other people, but if you can't breathe, you can't walk, you can't talk or something, it doesn't matter what it is. If you have the placard or the license plate, park where you need to park.
Exactly. Make it work for you. Because you don't get points for making yourself suffer across the parking lot.
No, you don't. You don't get, that person has severe breathing problems, but because they parked in the back so I could park in the front, I'm going to give them life points. It doesn't happen. This isn't Minecraft where we can create things like that.
And for the people that are watching, don't judge if you're parked in a handicapped spot.
Yeah.
Just believe it and respect it and let them go.
Exactly. You never know what's going on with another person.
Right.
Believe me, if I had been able to drive when I was right out of my nutcracker surgery, I would have made a handicap placard. Mm-hmm. Walking around with that long incision, it was a horrific experience. I was lucky if I could walk 20 minutes in the yard.
Yeah, it's excruciating painful. Any type of surgery, even if it's just a tiny little slit, it's still painful. But when it has something to do with, nutcracker and various other vascular issues, it's going to be even 10 times more painful. And
yeah, it's not fun.
No, but accusing somebody of parking in those spots, if they don't have anything to indicate that they are handicapped, I can understand being upset. That's not fair. Those handicapped spots are for the handicapped people with a placard and a license plate or a temporary, one. If you have it, park there. Mm-hmm. If you don't, you can fucking park in the back.
Amen to that. And for those who want to accuse anybody of faking a disability to get a handicap spot, I got one finger.
Yes.
Just one finger.
Exactly, because it's ridiculous to think that they are handing it out like candy. They don't. I had to jump through hoops in order to get my placard. And, I live in Pennsylvania. And I've known people who live in California that had to jump through hoops to get their placard. So it's not like you just go to the doctor and say, hey, I want a placard. And they're like, oh, well, here you go, sonny. It doesn't happen that way.
So since we're talking about accessibility, you said you aren't willing to get the SSDI, so I assume you work. Do you get accommodations and accessibility options for whatever you need?
It depends on the situation. There are some situations where I don't always need them, but there are some situations, like with today, for instance, we just came off of a major event at one of my jobs, and I had to put away a lot of stuff, and then my boss was like, okay, we're going to do major cleanup over the next couple of days. And I said to her, with how many physical hours I had to put in last week, I have to cut it short today. If you want me for tomorrow and Friday, I only have so much energy.
That's good that you get the support and that they understand.
Yeah, because some places are just like, oh, tough shit.
Yeah, it's hard to find that.
And I thank your boss that they are willing to provide accommodations for you instead of just, saying, oh, well, we'll find somebody else, or can't you just do it this once? And if only more companies could do that. I think that the amount of productivity that they could get out of not just able-bodied, but disabled people would be astronomical. Because they have proven time and time again that those of us in the disabled community will work very hard. We're more detail-oriented. We're more attention. Even those that have ADHD will, be more attention oriented to those jobs when they have the ability to say, oh, look, right now, I got to step back because my health is doing, something crazy. So I got to step back. And when you do that, you get more out of people than when you're just like, a hard driver and got the cat o' nine tails behind people, whipping left and right. And this is not a kinky story. And, trying to make sure that we're staying the full 8 hours, and you can't call out unless a hurricane and a tornado has hit your house.
Oh God, those are the worst. I have come in right after coming off of anaphylaxis with jobs like that.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the place where I'm working right now, it's based around supporting disabled students, so if they didn't give accommodations, that would kind of be a bad
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be kind of stupid on their part.
But they also appreciate how, like you said, how detail-oriented I am. When I saw that back room, I was like, have you done inventory for your events? Do you know how many supplies you have to order? What's the timeline going to look like? Do we have any structures and manuals for how to make these events happen? And they were like, we didn't even think about that. And I was like, that's what cafes and restaurants will do to you. But that's also what chronic illness will do to you, too. We got to think of all these details.
Yeah, because in order to survive in a world that's 100% not even made to think about us, we have to learn how to navigate things. So I would think, I posit, that we are actually better workers because we have to come up with so many different ways to do things in order to circumvent, whether or not we're in a wheelchair, or if we have limb difference, or if we have intellectual differences.
Damn right. And if hard work really was measured in wealth, we would be the billionaires, not Bezos.
Yeah, exactly. Because let's all be realistic. They don't do much past a certain point.
They really don't do much. And this is all while they're able-bodied, too. If they had to work even a fraction as hard as we did, they wouldn't last. They'd be burned out in seconds.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to not... Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be saying that, but... I won't say what I'm thinking, but it would be nice.
With that being said, we are running out of time. So, before we go, I wanted to give you a chance to maybe promote whatever you want or let people know how to find your writings or whatever you have coming up.
Seasons of Sisterhood is available through Spears Books and through Amazon.com. You can also find Last Dance, a poetry journal, in Barnes & Noble. You can find Nothing Ever Happens in Fox Hollow on Amazon. And I'm hoping to be publishing more soon.
Yay!
Awesome.
And I would, if you have any links of those, can you send that so that we could pop those up? And we'll also have a link to your personal page so that people can find you.
Absolutely, of course.
All right. Thank you very much for your time today.
So much.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
It has been.
Bye.
If you've made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Please leave a rating for us wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Othering Podcast is brought to you by Loudcore Productions in conjunction with your support. Your host, Mike and Dory Morris, graphics by Joshua Morris, and join us next week on the Othering Podcast.